afternoon and welcome to episode 29 of Will You Review My CV? I'm your host, Alan Wozni, and today's episode focuses on a job seeker in the healthcare sector. From her LinkedIn profile, it was pretty brief. I learned that this individual she's based in Miami, Florida, and has an MBA degree with a focus on what she describes as complex healthcare systems. It appears that she completed her degree in 2020, which is roughly 1 year after I submitted my career advice recommendations on LinkedIn. Her profile further indicates that she is a data-driven geek. Literally, that's right on her profile. On that backdrop, the PowerPoint presentation I will share in a few moments summarizes the key recommendations I made back in May 2019. And my update focuses on the considerable innovation in healthcare and life sciences sector, as well as the city in which this job seeker resides. That's Miami, Florida. So I want to share my screen here and go really just deeper, dig right in. Oops. For some reason, I'm not able to see where it is. So I'm going to try this again. Let's see. Bring it up over here, and maybe that'll be it. Do it for me. Okay. All right. So let's share my screen. Here we are. Oops. Looks like I'm going to be able to slideshow that. Start slideshow. I'm a rookie at this thing. Okay. So will you review my CV, episode 29, today, 4th of July, 2022. And the career advice, it was career advice number 177 to an individual named Anya Terrier. I think it's Terrier because there's the thing above the E. MBA healthcare out of Florida. This was done on LinkedIn back on 27th of May, 2019. So Anya had submitted in the LinkedIn, actually it wasn't on a LinkedIn. Normally I do the LinkedIn career group, premium career group, but this was through a LinkedIn influencer named Oleg Vishnopolsky. And back in 2018, 18, 19, I was following Oleg Vishnopolsky. I think at the time he had about 1.5 million followers, so it was pretty significant. So this is a post. She responded. So Oleg tends to, like Bridget Hyacinth, he tends to post, like my post, agree. He's really there for job seekers and trying to help them connect. So basically, Anya had posted, "I'm seeking new opportunities. Please tag me. Thank you in advance." So knowing the space, if you go to his post, he tends to have a lot of comments and a lot of people in there trying to help one another. So I then responded through a series of posts, I think 4 or 5 posts, but basically I gave this as an overview of my recommendations: healthcare venture capital, healthcare innovation, AngelList, and then I gave her some ideas about how to outreach on LinkedIn. And then for today, and just I wanted to bring in Gary Vaynerchuk. Back then, for some reason I didn't put in Gary Vaynerchuk into my recommendations for Anya, but I'm just gonna summarize them here. So that's kind of that's added for today. And I'm also going to talk about some innovation in Miami, which I didn't put here, but I want to talk about the recent innovation in that city because it's not necessarily healthcare, but a lot of tech innovation. Miami's kind of, there's a Techcrunch article. It's called Columbus is the new Miami, which is the new Silicon Valley. So a lot of migration into Miami. Columbus, Ohio, for some reason, it's also a hotbed of tech innovation. So looking back, 2019, I looked at the venture capital companies, and for just anybody who, for the 2 or 3 listeners or viewers of my podcast, of this episode of my YouTube channel, I had worked for a couple of years in kind of advisory roles for tech startups, a couple in healthcare, Digifarm and Horizon out of the UK and Switzerland, respectively, and also for a company called AI Valley out of Toronto. So was kind of looking at, back in 2019, I was looking at the healthcare venture capital space extensively. And so I had a massive list, or I still have a list, but back then I summarized it into kind of the Eastern Seaboard, like to give Anya an idea of the healthcare sector. And why do I talk about healthcare venture capital? One of the key things that, if any viewers of my, either these episodes or some of my posts on LinkedIn will know, I tend to look at the healthcare. I think there's two real good opportunities for work. One is with the healthcare companies and healthcare venture capitals themselves. They tend to hire PhDs, scientists, doctors, lawyers, the people in that in that field, to help them advise on their try to help them advise on their investments. And the other thing is the portfolio companies themselves, they hire the same people to help them grow their startup. So looking back now, so in Florida, I had given an example, a few ideas, and so just a few ideas. Ballast Point Ventures out of Tampa. They have on their, if you go to their website now, they've got 17 health-related portfolio companies. Blue Sea Capital, they're in West Palm Beach. They focus, their investments focus on medical devices, medical services, healthcare services, and manufacturing. So I guess for the devices and so forth. Avidity Health Capital out of Miami. They focus on medical technology companies. So their portfolio, what they invest in. Health Edge Investment out of Tampa, specialty medical products and devices. So these are healthcare, these are venture capital companies. So they invest in, not necessarily only in Miami and Florida area, but they're based in Florida. So Health Edge Investments, specialty medical products and devices. And then MD Healthcare Partners out of Tampa. They tend to invest in physicians or multi-site providers. So, the clinics and so forth. And then the last one out of Florida is called Sun Capital Partners. They're in Boca Raton, and they focus on healthcare. Healthcare is one of many sectors. So they have a lot of sectors. If you go to their website, they have a lot of different sectors that they're focused on. Healthcare happens to be one of them. Not too far away, North Carolina, up the coast. I tried to keep it in this area. Three key ones, and I see their name. I still see these names, particularly Hatteras Venture Partners and Papas Capital. Golden Pine Ventures out of Durham. They focus on biotech, biomedical companies. Hatteras Venture Partners out of Durham, also Raleigh-Durham area. Pharmaceuticals, medical devices, diagnostics, and health tech, so a wide variety of companies. And then Papas Capital. I mean, they're massive. I mean, I went to the website, just kind of counted 70 plus portfolio companies, mostly in pharmaceuticals and health science. So again, I'm not saying these are jobs there. I just think if you look at the portfolio companies, you never know where they're located. And as I learned from the portfolio of Anya's, her LinkedIn profile, she's a data geek. She's a health management, health sciences, complex health systems. She'd probably fit into one or two of these companies or the venture capital companies to help on, they have a target. If they're targeting investment in certain areas, and she's got an idea, how administration works, project management of these companies, could be a fit. I don't know. New York, many venture capital companies in healthcare space, a lot of venture capital companies in general, but healthcare space, Aisling Capital Management, Eric's Biosciences, Eric's Bioscience, Deerfield Management, Wyndham Venture Partners. So those are four that I know of. Biopharma, diagnostics, devices, Aisling Capital Management. They have 100 plus companies in their portfolio. Eric's Bioscience focuses on biotherapeutics. Deerfield Therapeutics, MedTech, Health Tech Services. And then Wyndham Venture Partners, they tend to look at startups. It says health tech startups. I went to their website. They have about 25 plus entities or portfolio companies. And then Boston. I mean, there's so many pharmaceutical companies in Boston, but the healthcare venture capital, the four that I picked up, you see these, you'll see, if you look today, funding announcements in the healthcare space, you'll see these names come up as well. BioStar Capital, Longitude Capital, Oak HCFT, so that's HC Healthcare and FinTech, and then Third Rock Ventures. So BioStar focus seems of life sciences, biopharma, longitude seems to be quite in depth. They got breadth and depth. Biotech, medtech, health tech, 60 plus portfolio companies on their listed on their website. Oak, HCFT, they're massive. I mean, they're massive. They only only had 40 plus healthcare focus. I don't even know the fintech. I didn't count the fintech, but they focus on biotherapeutics, healthcare providers, and medical devices. And then last one is the Third Rock Ventures. They focus on biotherapeutics. So I think cancer research, those the different types of immunology, that would be their focus. They have 50 plus companies active on their portfolio. Back in 2019, I had put together some different. I lumped it into three: healthcare SaaS, healthcare AI, ML, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and then specialty. So those are the three categories. It's arbitrary. I mean, there's so many different companies out there. It's hard to put them into one category per se. Notable. I love the notable story. When I gave this advice in 2019, I think 6 months earlier, or a few months earlier, I listened to the notable CEO and founder. He was speaking on a podcast, and it literally, he talked about when you walk in, when you walk into the healthcare, instead of the clipboard and you fill in all the documents, he wanted to create the experience that you walk in and you get a notification on your phone. So this is 2019. I think they've advanced further beyond now, but their website says today, AI enabled for doctor visits, digitize the patient intake, scheduling, authorization. But I remembered vividly, the CEO saying, the doctors today, they're so tech enabled, they spend more time just kind of filling in forms on their websites or on their, using the technology, and they don't have the patient time. So using the AI to push notifications to the billing, instead of the doctor filling out the forms, it automatically from the patient when the patient walks in the door. So I really like that. It still resonates to this day. Cyrus MD, virtual care solutions for employers, retail education. They list this on their website, the retail, education, industry, hospitality sectors. Now, all of these I went back today to see how relevant some of these companies are. There's a couple they're no longer even, the websites the link doesn't work. But I just wanted to get to see what they're doing today, because 3 years is on, they've changed a little bit. A company called Human API. It's basically focused on health data. And I know that Anya, you were mentioned that you're a data geek. This could be a good company to get to know and learn how to apply in your world today down in Miami. Health data, insurance this is for insurance providers, wellness clinics, clinical trials. And I think I'm pretty sure most of the data would probably be anonymized, it's respecting patient confidentiality. So taking the raw data, health ID, using it for identification of individuals, and on their website, they talk about COVID and how important that was. And then just for health plans, again, data, particularly insurance, what's the data telling the story of where people are ill, what kind of illnesses, and so forth. So data is really important. And then a company called Redox. They focus on healthcare providers and the vendors to allow them to digitally share data. Because again, back to the notable, you walk in a doctor's office and manually filling out forms, or if you switch doctors, or for me, I lived overseas, we would switch countries and you'd have to just bring the documents, manual documents. So I think it's a wonderful thing for them. Redox, companies like that who share digitally and not have to wait for the fax. I mean, there's companies still faxing the forms over from one doctor to another. And then the next level back in 2019, I love some of these companies because they stick with me for the things that they do. Cuventus. So this is AI or artificial intelligence and machine learning. Cuventus predicts patterns of movement of patients. What are your peak times? What are your down times? To allow, for staffing and the supplies you may need. I mean, it's wonderful today. I didn't look at it today, but I think what a great, I didn't look at this. I think a few weeks ago I looked at this, but Cuventus is, just incredible innovation, which is just helpful for hospitals, clinics, staffing. When if you've got peak times, just make sure you're more efficient on your staffing and the supplies you order. Lean tasks, they're using AI and ML to help hospitals. The thing called IQ for operating rooms and beds. Again, same thing, like kind of if the beds are idle, maybe you can use them for non-invasive surgery or whatever it is. Suki, using artificial intelligence and natural language processing for a voice-enabled doctor's assistant. So that's pretty important for doctors taking notes, or if he's, having issues with a patient, it's just scribing the notes as opposed to him or her manually writing these things out. And Medopad, they were acquired by Huma. If you go to their website, it's now called Huma. The link takes you to there, but they use AI and ML to predict, detect critical conditions. So again, the data that they get about patients and looking at their conditions, I can just imagine how important it would be for a doctor if he spits out his here's the key data, here's some of the symptoms, here's some of the, what could this be indicative of, and compare that to other similar patients or of age, demographics, wherever they are. I mean, it's incredible. This is back to data. Anya, this is data again, using data, so the ML, the AI is only as good as the data. So the algorithm and the heuristic data sets, that if she's a data geek, if you're a data geek, Anya, companies like that could use your input. You're now as a data, you're not a data scientist, but you understand the data that's coming out on the healthcare side. And then the last one is this specialty. I call it specialty. Labster, just like Napster, just like Notable. I heard the Labster. It was on a podcast. I looked them up. Whoa, this is cool. They use virtual reality headsets, so they can perform complex chemical analysis in the lab, but virtually in the lab without having to be there. And so, that's. I think they're out of Norway. I think Labster's out of Norway or Denmark or something like that. But they're literally in the lab, create the conditions and mixing chemicals without actually having to touch the chemicals. So and I think the research labs of universities are a big focus of big users of Labster. Everly Well, we're focused on in-home health tests. Vita Health, personalized on-demand health coaching and programs. And that would probably be good for companies. So, coaching your staff, if they have health problems, you have a dedicated coach who can help talk you through it. Maybe not a doctor, maybe it's a physician, maybe it is, maybe it is some kind of healthcare provider that's, can give you advice for minor conditions and so forth. So it's helping the employers. Nova Signal, formerly Neural Analytics. They use robotics and artificial intelligence to focus on brain health, so symptoms on the brain. They've changed their name, again, been acquired. I think they were acquired. Either they changed their name or they were acquired. So then the next level, AngelList is one of my used to be one of my go-tos, and now the algorithm is set differently, so you can't get the same information. The IP knows where I am, so it always shows me jobs in Canada. So, but back then, I used to go to AngelList for almost every advice or career advice I submitted back in 2019, 2020. Incredible, a lot of startups. Literally, the startups are on there, but they list tech and non-tech roles. So back then, the open roles. To put in context, AngelList had 20,000 to 30,000 open roles globally back in 2019. I didn't show it here. US was always about 2/3 of that, so I think about 20,000 or something like that. But then if you drill down and the algorithm, it probably still works. It didn't test it because it just didn't seem right. So when I was doing my searches to update this stuff. So the open roles across Florida, 329, again, not healthcare, but just the open roles. In Miami, 139 different startups had roles listed, or I don't know if it's startups or it's just roles. And then the actual health startups, back then, and I think you could still use it, but the search algorithm within AngelList, you could type in health, and 20 startups had roles listed, or 20, I think there's 20 startups, individual companies. Health, wellness, and life science, there was 18 open roles. And then just a couple companies that I had picked up that were health related, not necessarily in Miami or Florida. One company called TriNet, they focus on human resources and health benefits for the personnel. They're still active. So health benefits for, the benefits for the employees. And then UniVidoc, it was kind of cool because you go to the website, it's all in Spanish. And literally this was back in 2019, they were there to connect Hispanic doctors. Obviously 3 years on, they're still active. And that was on AngelList, they were probably a pure startup in 2019, much more advanced today. I don't speak Spanish, but it seemed to be a pretty vibrant website. So I did update. So I went and looked. I looked at the health startups listed on AngelList. So you just type in life science, and 1,989 entities or results came back. Healthcare, the words healthcare typed in. So this is globally, 555. So if I was looking for work in healthcare space, I'd just be trolling through those 1,989 entries and seeing what kind of companies are there. Maybe there's an online, maybe there's a remote work. I don't know. Then medtech, 575, health tech, 567. There might be some overlap probably in some of these, and then biotech, 185. But I think there's healthcare. This is probably the core. If you take the healthcare, 555, 575, there's some overlap. I think that there's duplication, but life science, it's strange that so many of life science and I thought there'd be more of healthcare. Anyway, so that's AngelList. That's I think it's incredible. AngelList is much more advanced than it was 3-4 years ago. I think it's an incredible resource for startups. And if Anya, you're into healthcare systems and complex health systems, your understanding and how to navigate that could be very valuable to some of these startups and advising them, maybe not just one startup, but maybe multiple startups. Look, I'm no expert. I just think if you started reaching out to companies and said, how can I help, or knowing their business, you might be able to find your way into their activities. All right. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I couldn't find a lot of health tech companies in Florida, but I did type in, for Miami, as I said earlier, Techcrunch has an article. It's called Columbus, Ohio. Columbus is the new Miami, which is the new Nashville, which is new Silicon Valley. So Miami's I've seen a ton of they've had tech conferences and a lot of blockchain, crypto companies going there, but just tech in general is really migrated to Miami. So the 5 I found over the last couple months, company called Audience, they raised on 30th of June, just last week, they raised 10 million. They use robots to write handwritten notes for direct marketers. Kind of cool. Rigor, 17th of June, they raised 3.5 million. Their DeFi or decentralized finance protocol for construction lending and payments. So big sector in construction is probably big. And if there's a growth in Miami, if there's people migrating there, I'm sure there's a lot of growth in the construction sector. Teal, it's an HR career site for job seekers. They raised 6.3 million and announced on 9th of June. Debbie, company's called Debbie. 1st of June, they announced their 1.2 million in fundraising. I think it's a seed, like they're just a startup. Their app offers users rewards for paying off their debt. So yeah, there's a pretty cool. If you look at their website, I think it's a woman founder, and they're just there to help people pay off debt and reward them for it, and create incentives to focus on your debt management. Pigeon Loans, now again, fintech or lending space. 19th of May, they raised 2.5 million, and the platform makes it easier for friends and family to lend each other money. So I didn't look in details, but I got to think that's pretty cool. All right. So Anya, the healthcare innovation, and I since 2019, or I was because I was working for a couple of healthcare startups, one in Switzerland, one in the UK, and then AI Valley in Toronto. I was in this space. Every time I open up my Strictly VC newsletter, there's always one or two kind of funding announcements for healthcare. That was in 2018. Today, no exception. A lot of them are biotherapeutics. A lot of them are, the drug companies, pharmaceutical companies. But then once in a while, you just find tech innovation in healthcare. Not once in a while, but since the last couple of months, I put together, I just found more for her. If Anya, you're working in healthcare management, not necessarily pharmaceuticals. So that was my focus when I trolled through the last couple of days in some of these funding announcements. So Florence, they're out of the UK, London, 16th of June, they announced 35 million raise. They connect vacant care home shifts to local nurses and carers looking for extra work. So it's basically in-home care, people getting in-home care. I got to imagine it's so important, and particularly because of COVID. During COVID, not a lot of people wanted to go to the hospitals or those assisted living places because there was huge outbreaks of COVID and a lot of deaths. So I think, I didn't look in details, but I imagine Florence probably they probably accelerated their platform. A lot of demand as more in-home care, managed healthcare, whatever you want to call it. So that's a pretty significant raise. I got to imagine a lot of people are using their app or their service. Kyra Care. So again, Florida, big retirement area. It's always well known. It's big retirement that in Arizona. I got to imagine this would be pretty important kind of a technology to implement in Florida, particularly around the retirees and areas where people just get in-home care. So Kyra Care out of Berlin, they announced a $7 million raise on 15th of June. So that focuses a digital gut health app, helps users track gut issues like IBS. I don't even know these celiac disease, I guess. But it's just really, there's more data again, right? Imagine the data around that could, that Anya, if again, I don't know, people have gut health issues and there's solutions for that. Ina, it's probably Ina, out of Berlin on the 1st of June, they raised 10 million. They announced a 10 million raise. Mini Lab product uses saliva to track female cycles and fertility levels. So I'd share this with a local company here in Calgary. They had My Normative, she had done an app on exactly this, when women have their cycle, their monthly cycle. And so kind of cool. They use saliva to track, to predict, I imagine predicting the cycles. Hello Heart out of San Francisco, 2nd of May, they raised 70 million, and their app tracks blood pressure, sends medication reminders, and wellness tips. And then the last one is IntelliCare out of Boston, 7th of April, they raised 115 million. It's a nurse staffing platform. So again, I'm not saying, obviously for $115 million, people are using their app, they're using that service. So nursing, it's part of healthcare, it's part of hospital management. The large majority of the staff are probably nurses, more so than doctors. So pretty important. And again, doctors, I'm sure there's not just nurses. I'm sure they have other support staff that bolt onto this, service. All right. And I wanted to just point out, my research, didn't just stop and, when I was working for companies, but over the last year, because of COVID and so forth, there's it seems to be more companies come up, but 3 main companies that I came across, they're more of a holding company, venture capital. Flagship Pioneering. Now, you may never heard of Noubar Afeyan, but many people have heard of Moderna, one of the big drugs during COVID. And Moderna, so Noubar Afeyan is the founder of Moderna. But the Flagship Pioneering, the amount of startups in pharmaceuticals, medtech, health tech startups, most of them are private. They list 20 plus on their website. It's just incredible. And there's a lot of startups, a lot of real early startups. So pretty good opportunity if people just get in the ground floor. So Roo Capital Management, they partner with Social Capital, and the founder of Social Capital is Chamath Palihapitiya. And Chamath is, well known in venture capitalist. But Suvretta lists 25 plus companies within their portfolio: bioscience, pharma, medtech, health tech. Many are listed on NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange. And then the last one it's probably not as significant as the other two, Arboretum Ventures out of Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan. They invest in medical devices, diagnostics, life science, and medtech companies. They have 23 active portfolio investments or active companies in their portfolio. But on Crunchbase, they list 90 investments in their lifetime. So they're a pretty active company. That's kind of why it got my attention. All right. And then the last thing I wanted to say for Anya is really just, learning about Gary Vaynerchuk, getting to listen to Gary Vaynerchuk. First time I heard of him, to get noticed and to get people aware of your skills. The first thing I heard of Gary Vaynerchuk was he literally, it was a podcast or a keynote speech he'd given. He said, if you're 49-year-old Mary the accountant or 72-year-old Stan the electrician, it's not too late. So, for me, I heard that, well, hey, I'm 52-year-old Alan the accountant. That was back 3-4 years ago. But, for Gary Vaynerchuk to get noticed, recommendations are post articles on Facebook or LinkedIn. So she could post articles in local companies. Okay, so I've taken this from a previous one, but what could she do? Posting articles of healthcare innovation in Miami. Talk about things that are going on in Miami Dolphins in healthcare. Interview the doctor from Miami. Do anything that's in your local, anything health related in your local market. The Crushing It book, recommend reading it, listening to it on Audible. I have it. I've listened to it many times. It features ordinary people who got noticed. Mimi Goodwin comes to mind. She has a thing called So Death. It's a magazine. And she's a sewer. The reason she got on there because she was just grinding it out, copying the runway dresses and sewing them for people. And that basically took off to a point where she's got her own line and she's a significant following. Alex Hansey, he has the Foolies clothing company. And basically, he just ground it out or just was really grinding it out to produce shirts with cool logos. And one of the orders he got one time was it was a $20,000 or $15,000 order that he had to fulfill by a certain time, worked late through the night. The next morning, when he arrived there to the event to hand the shirts, there was Oprah Winfrey, and the order was for her, but they didn't make that known. So if you go to his Twitter, I think if you go to his Twitter page, he has that photo where he took the picture with Oprah Winfrey. It's been a few years ago, but that story just resonates. And then other considerations, high school party concept. That's where you move from a D to an A or B on the social scale to an A. You move up. So the person who hosts the party becomes the social, the socialite of the community. On a business context, you could use that to invite founders or business owners, healthcare professionals, invite them onto open a Clubhouse channel, chat room, and invite healthcare administrators from around Florida, health professionals, doctors, nurses. Talk about the issues. You talk about the issues that are important to them in their community. And, that's become the high school party. You become the person who hosts the party and everybody talks about you. So on a business level, maybe use of TikTok. There was 45-year-old, a dentist. She created she was basically the cool dentist. She was also featured on Gary's Crushing It book, Gary Vaynerchuk's Crushing It book. And she literally became I think somewhere in New Jersey, where she just became the cool dentist. And 5-year-old kids wanted to go to that dentist. She teaching them how to floss. She did a TikTok video. There is 27-year-old Miss Excel, Kat Norton. She's got 1 million+ followers on Instagram, 1 million+ followers on TikTok, just showing people how to use Excel. She's only 27, showing people how to use Excel. And then there's the last one, just that Chip Conley's Midlife Wisdom School. There's just the things of people looking for work. And instead of, the focus is just you're mid-career and you've done one thing all your life, and he's there. Chip Conley's school is there to foster the innovation out of the elderly population. And so that's the career advice summation for Anya Terrier. Career advice number 177 that I provided back in May 2029, and today's date is the 4th of July. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm just going to summarize. I'm going to summarize now. As I highlighted, on the outset, there's incredible innovation and really the corresponding venture capital funding relates to that in the life sciences, biosciences, healthcare administration, medical devices, pharmaceuticals, and related industries. The overlay into the health tech or medtech sector is the artificial intelligence, machine learning, virtual reality, data science, IoT or Internet of Things, and connected devices. Those only enhance the value of the innovation in the different in that sector. In fact, there's a 3D printing is now being used to create or recreate the vital organs and body parts to allow surgeons to practice on lifelike models. And one such company I came across in March 2021, it's a company called Lazarus 3D. And I attended, it was a Zoom conference. The Smart Engine is a crowdfunding platform, and they had a pitch presentation. And they do them I think every 3 months. And it's hosted by Kevin O'Leary, and people may know him from the Shark Tank. He's one of the judges on Shark Tank, and he's also known as Mr. Wonderful. And so this was back in March 2021, and the CEO of Lazarus 3D, CEO and co-founder Smitri Agrawal-Zanaveld, she pitched this unique innovation. So basically, they created a heart valve or heart, a 3D heart printed on some kind of, I don't know, synthetic rubbers, and to help doctors to do the surgery right on a lifelike heart. And actually, so the Lazarus 3D, out of the 5 presenters, the 5 companies who presented, they were selected. Kevin O'Leary selected her company as the winner. And I think they won, the Lazarus 3D won $5,000 or $25,000 plus a chance to pitch further on to other investors within the Start Engine group. And Crunchbase reveals they've raised now $6 million to date. So they've been very successful. Maybe it was before, I don't know, I didn't know the timing, but they won that event, and it seems that they're really getting traction. So congratulations to the Lazarus 3D company, individuals or team. So the innovation is rapidly evolving in most sectors. It's not just healthcare. And I was, it's like, how does any one person, how do you keep up? Like, what do you do? I mean, if you're, I'm talking about healthcare today, but there's marketing, there's accounting, there's legal, there's all kind, so many sectors are innovating these days. One of the best recommendations I received on this question came from Tessa May Marr. She's the CEO and founder of Marr Media Group out of Kelowna, British Columbia, or Penticton, BC. So not far from me. She used to be in Calgary. But Tessa, she was a guest on my podcast, the Calgary Business Podcast, episode 302, back in May of 2021, so a year ago. And so essentially, I asked Tessa about her team, how her team keeps up with such rapid advances in technology around digital media, digital marketing, and so forth. And Tessa provided this practical piece of advice, which I think works for any sector. I ask my staff to remain curious and open to such innovation. Learn enough to see if there is relevancy to adopt or apply such technology or innovation in our business or for that of our customers. So Anya and others in the healthcare sector, healthcare industry, I think this holds for you. Find the technology changes or innovation applicable to your work and your areas of interest and anything else applicable. Where applicable, perform a deep dive. Learn as much as you can. Try to adopt such technology in your day-to-day work. You could download the demo, subscribe to the company's newsletter, follow their feed on, their social media feed, either on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter. Get to know who's using their software. Maybe if you see there's a link or commonality to your work, perhaps just reach out to the companies and get their feedback, informal or formal. I don't know. I just don't know where that's going to take you. But not looking at that, not researching it, it's not going to help you, and it's not going to be bad for you. It keeps you in the forefront. And as I said, as I've learned over the past 4 years, Most of the SaaS or software as a service is pretty easy to use and does not require an IT specialist to become functional. You don't have to take long courses. Definitely don't have to go back to university to become proficient in a lot of the software out there today. But there's even like advancements in low code, no code software that it just makes it easier for non-tech personnel. Like your website. It took me a weekend 3-4 years ago. I put my website on Wix together within 3-4 hours or over the weekend. The advances now they're so far ahead that non-tech personnel can just grab the software and use it within a matter of hours or days. So I recommend that job seekers focus on the future, and the only way to make an impact on the future is to take action today. This has been Will You Review My CV? Again, I'm Alan Wozni, your host. Have a great day. Cheers.